To the Eastern Cape now. Thank you very much, Heidi Jarkos, because our reporter on the Enyobeni Tavern story, Aviwe Mtila, is joining us now. Aviwe, over to you. Good evening.
Good evening, Sally, and we're just at the doorstep of Enyobeni Tavern, where, as you can see, the alcohol from inside has been taken. This is the second van, in fact, that is now loading whatever alcohol was remaining inside Enyobeni. In fact, the police and investigators just finished their investigations now. They're saying it's no longer an active crime scene, and hence now the owners of Enyobeni Tavern are taking whatever else alcohol is left inside here. Remember, the liquor board has already shut it down indefinitely with those criminal charges, even currently at the police station in East London and Fleet Street, charged with serving alcohol to minors. I want to take you inside, Sally, given that the last time that it was officially opened was when these tragic events are happening. You can see the gentleman here loading whatever alcohol is left. The second van, in fact, that was carrying now this alcohol. I'm going to take you inside Enyobeni Tavern, Sally, just to show you the aftermath of that fateful Sunday where 21 teenagers lost their lives. Even as you come in, you can still see that there are bottles that are broken, alcoholic bottles that have been broken on the ground. There are even what looks like weaves that are on the ground, Sally, just a bit filthy. That would show you even slops that are broken on the ground. This is inside Enyobeni Tavern. Since it was closed down for the investigation, now no longer an active crime scene. In fact, I was having a word, Sally, with some of these investigators that they tell me that now they were taking whatever alcoholic remains that were inside here, for also the food that was inside, to be taken now to Pretoria. Remember that the blood samples and the autopsy that was done in East London was taken to the toxicology lab in Cape Town, but we hear now whatever remains and the samples that were taken in the previous days leading up to today was taken to Pretoria to forensics there. Some of these experts were telling me. I want to take you upstairs, Sally, just to get a better picture of maybe what was happening. We just took you downstairs where you can see it was actually hardly difficult to move. This, we are told, is the VIP area, Sally, where we are told people had to wear black in order to come into this section. Some of these windows are where these children were jumping from. In fact, my colleague now walking inside what we know is the VIP area. This is where it was safer, we understand, from the patrons that we've been speaking to. In fact, we spoke to some 7 teenagers that were here on the day of the events. 4 of them ended up in hospital, 1 needing ventilators. He says he was trying to make his way up to this VIP area. He says that there was some sort of security personnel who had dreadlocks, a female lady, in fact, that upon them trying to get upstairs here, sprayed them with some sort of chemical which made them dizzy. And as they made their way down, he even wanted to be sleepy, but luckily he was able to get out inside. What I'm really noticing, Sally, is that there's only one entrance, the one that you saw a bit earlier on. So it would even talk about how these teenagers were trying to go outside. You can see the liquor bottles that are still strewn all over the floor here. What is left now from, you can expect that the investigators were just combing through, taking the DNA samples, taking even whatever samples of alcohol that was here and the food that was here. Now we understand that's been taken to Pretoria for a further lab test. But whatever blood samples were here and the autopsy results are in Cape Town to the toxicology lab there, Sally, as we give you an insight of Enyobeni Tavern and what it looks like inside here.
All right, so it's interesting what you're showing us, because this is the upstairs VIP area. Do you know, did most of the deaths occur downstairs or upstairs?
Downstairs, Sally, we are told that, of course, what we're hearing from the teenagers, especially the ones we spoke to today, is that they were trying to protect the influx of people coming in to upstairs. Hence, there was something that was sprayed, and the people then, remember, they were trying to run outside. I'm trying to think how around 300 people are said to be inside such a confined space. But we're told these teenagers were trying to run outside, where they started fainting out of their own accord after being sprayed, we are told, by those that were inside by some form of chemical. Hence now that stampede has been ruled out, given that they were just falling at their own accord, Sally, from the eyewitnesses that we've ourselves have spoken to, even from the experts that we've spoken to, suggesting that it's something that had to have been sprayed at close proximity, something that they inhaled, or something that then they consumed. Hence, these investigations are still continuing, with even the alcoholic beverages been taken now, we understand, to Pretoria, and the blood samples that were taken, even the autopsy results, and those abnormalities that were seen in all these deceased, those results taken to the toxicology lab in Cape Town. But it's just quite mind-boggling as to how 300 people would be able to fit at such a small establishment, Sally, whether inside or upstairs or downstairs. It's just a bit mind-boggling, Sally, at this stage.
So, Aviwe, where you are, it's a sort of an open plan area, and while there's only that one entrance, there are windows. But you're saying that most people actually died downstairs. So that suggests that downstairs was potentially a lot more crowded, because this was a VIP area where you paid more. I'm not sure if you're able to take us downstairs, because you seem to be only in the entrance hall, and I was wondering what the sort of, there must be a dance floor or a bar. Are you able to access that? Is it the same sort of size? Because it actually looked quite small and pokey, the area you were in, downstairs.
That's the downstairs area, Sally, that you just got back from. In fact, we'll take you inside downstairs once more, just to show you how more crowded it is. So these are the stairs that some of these teenagers were actually falling in as they were trying to make their way down. We're told that this bouncer was spraying whatever spray or chemical that she had in hand, and then these children were trying to run out. This is the door, Sally, that they were making their way to, the only entrance we do understand of Enyobeni Tavern itself. I'm just going to give you a quick sight of inside, just how it looks. The owner now is chasing us outside, saying that, can we please leave? But this is downstairs, where you'll be able to see it's even less, it's less confined. There's less space from what we saw upstairs. This is the downstairs area, Sally, where we're told at least 300 patrons were there on the day, and we understand the majority of them are found downstairs, the majority of these teenagers that passed away here. But the owner is actually taking us to go outside, and we'll respect that. But this is the only door, Sally, the one that we just got outside from, as we do understand this is no longer an active crime scene now. And that van that you see there is taking the second load of alcohol that was just taken outside here. Of course, now this tavern and its future looks quite bleak. Alcohol board has closed it down indefinitely, but the community members as well saying that they've had enough. They don't want any form of alcohol. Remember, it's also in a residential area, and especially following these deaths that have happened here, they're saying that they don't want anything of the sort. In fact, Sally, we were speaking to some of these teenagers, 7 of them earlier on. 4 of them, after being here Sunday, ended up in hospital, 1 needing ventilation. He spoke just of how difficult it was to breathe, Sally, as he was trying to make his way upstairs. And there was this, we do understand, a bouncer, a female bouncer, that stopped them on their tracks, saying that there was something that was sprayed as they were making their way upstairs there. I want you to take a listen to this teenager, aged between 14 and 17, the ones that we spoke to today, Sally. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
And kabanzima ukwehle nandizi so ukuna sabuya endlini ekuseni kuna ndaqomba hayi andizothetha endlini bani nento endiqaqambelayo because mama unedrama ubendithithisa. So kwathi gqupho ndingawasikhulisa wanamasambi sempilweni ngathi empilweni makutest uba thethe ba ubangela bala ndachaza ba kubuhlungu aphakathi, especially xa ngikhohlela uba so ndafaka umatshini ngona ndatesta kwathwana mandilaliswe kancinci ndafaka oxygen
So Maseko is explaining that he was sprayed by one of the securities at Enyobeni Tavern. It was difficult to breathe, and he was taken to hospital after going home by one of the neighbors. Kwakusenza kantoni after uthuthuze uyayazi lento wawuspraywa ngayo and kwenzeka ntoni khasicacisele nje buspraywa ngubani ukusprayayo kwenzeka ntoni?
Umuntu ongumama une-dreads and ngokunaspray andithi ngaske nandilale ngungungungu and xa ndiqomama andizangizolala mzosela.
So he's saying that there's this female security with dreadlocks apparently that sprayed whatever he breathed, inhaled basically, and he felt dizzy, which made him want to sleep immediately, but somehow he managed to go outside.
And also you've spoken to a couple of teenagers who were talking about how others were just falling to the ground and then people stepping over them. And I would imagine as well that as people started panicking a little bit, seeing people falling, everyone would want to get out quite quickly. Just tell us about that.
Sally, really mind-boggling to me how these teenagers, we saw the pictures of just these huge crowds and how they made it in such a small space, in such a confined space. But they were telling us that they were being let in and upon arrival they were being given free alcohol. They were given shots, they mentioned the specific brand of the alcohol which was opened, and they say that they were even given food. But they do detail how after this form of chemical was sprayed upon them, they were just falling at will. Some of these teenagers that were here, I remember we spoke to 7 of them in grade 8 up to grade 10. Some of these teenagers quite young. Let's take a listen to what they had to say about their experience at Enyobeni Tavern on the night that the 21 teenagers passed away.
Abantu phayana bebesiwa phayana and abanye benyathela, but abantu wawungavubi uhamba pha phansi engathi uhamba emoyeni wawungava xa unyathela umuntu.
Utsho njani? Babesiwa njani? Khayicacise nathi.
Like engathi kukho ibhathini evela icosho kuwe abantu phaya ngaphakathi and wawungazivi noba unyathele umuntu naye engathi uhamba emoyeni.
Very mysterious, Maseko, saying that it was like some sort of button was pressed and these teenagers, we understand in the majority, were just falling at random, and even those that were on the ground, it's like they were floating on air, he's trying to describe, as they were trying to walk there, walking on top of some of these teenagers, we understand. But gents, you all under the ages of 18, how did you go inside there, and were you sold alcohol? What was happening? Kasicacisela uba nangena njani ningaphansi kweminyaka eyi-18 notywala nanto ubuthengisela okanye kwakusenzeka ntoni?
Yeah, man, apha kwakukho ipost kuFacebook yabo ethi nge-25 yonke nizaba free eNyobeni. Xa nathi ke ngosatsalelweni kuba singenamali yoyosela soqonde masiye eNyobeni. Xa sifika eNyobeni uthi ufika njena useliswe ishort, xa ungenayo unikwe isavana ezo zasithi gqise zivuliwe yabo. So ke naxa uthenga utywala uthenga uphiwe nebhotile ya free, phiwe notywala ba free, yonke into yayi-free phana, nokutya sasifumana free phana.
Maseko is saying that they saw this Facebook post saying that there's going to be some sort of party on the 25th at Enyobeni. Upon arrival there, you were given free shots, you were given free alcohol, some of it was opened. Even when you bought something, they'd give you a free bottle, we understand. So even the food that was being distributed there, they're telling us that they were free.
All right, so Aviwe, those accounts are really important. I would imagine the police have also spoken to those youngsters to get as much information as possible, because of course it's about understanding how these children died, but then also making a decision about how and who to prosecute. You've explained that it's no longer, that Enyobeni Tavern is no longer an active crime scene, which is why you were able to walk through it, and that forensic investigators were gathering more samples, I presume, for testing. But talk to me about what's going to happen next in terms of the police investigation, answers on that forensic work to try and figure out how these children died or what chemical they ingested. And then in terms of the funerals coming up, I believe, this weekend. Aviwe, can you hear me? Aviwe, can you hear me? Let me try one more time. All right. We seem to have lost Aviwe Mtila there.
I'm struggling with your audio. I'm hoping you can hear me and just bear with me that side. But of course, it's no longer an active crime scene. In fact, my line has been dropped. I just might alert you about that. But it's no longer an active crime scene. What you're seeing now is the third van that's also taking the alcohol that's remaining now. But just on the children that we spoke to, they told us, Sally, it was a trauma for them, and they now going for counseling, which has made it much better for them. Of course, those investigations are still continuing and probing of these youngsters. But what's interesting now, Sally, I'm not sure if my colleague can show you, there's one police nyala that's still here with some police looking on. The only reason, Sally, that they are still around, they are now guarding the owner and just some of the helpers here as they collect whatever is remaining of the alcohol. They're fearful for themselves. Vyoka Zindevu was telling me now that we needed to move out of the driveway because they need to stock up and load up whatever alcohol is remaining, because the minute that these police leave, they fear for their own lives, because they say they've received such animosity and treatment. She's saying that for the last couple of days she hasn't been able to move out of her house where she has been stationed. It's one of the few times actually that she's now been able to move out of the house. But what we've gathered then, Sally, from our sources is that in the last couple of days, 2 or 3 days, what's been collected here, remember it was an active crime scene, what's been collected here, the bottles, the alcohol and the food samples are taken to the forensic labs in Pretoria just to be further assessed as they try to pinpoint exactly what happened here. But when it comes to the blood samples and the autopsies, just the pathological results that were taken in East London at the Woodbrook mortuary, those have been taken to Cape Town at the toxicology lab there. Of course, the pathological lab here has determined that it was some sort of chemical poisoning that has happened, and the toxicology lab then in Cape Town is trying to pinpoint the exact toxins then that led to those deaths. But there's also a lab, we do understand it's also a lab in Pretoria that's looking at the samples of the alcohol and what might have been in the alcohol and the food that was consumed here by some of these teenagers. But you heard, Sally, some of those witness accounts from the 7 teenagers that we spoke to, detailing the events that might have happened here, saying that they lost their friends, yes, themselves escaped death, as they were trying to put it to us, being able to go home. Out of the 7 that we spoke to, 4 of them ended up in hospital, and 1 was needing ventilation because he had difficulty breathing after being sprayed, as he told us, by one of the bouncers of Enyobeni Tavern. So throughout the course of today, the owners have been here, the husband, Vyoka Zindevu, the wife, I beg your pardon, and his husband, Siakangela Ndevu. Siakangela tells me that they were summoned, in fact, by the police here, just to look at their statements and also look at some of the contents that were inside. They say they haven't, there's nothing in terms of arrests that they are aware about, but we do know that there is a case that's been opened by the Liquor Board at the East London Police Station in Fleet Street, with the charges emanating around the selling of alcohol to minors, even allowing the minors here, who tells us that they were just let in at their own accord, and they were given alcohol inside here, the shots. They were given open beverages of alcohol and also free food. Hence maybe why these investigators are also just were combing through, in fact, to the exact contents that might have been there. But now it's no longer an active crime scene, and Enyobeni Tavern now will be closed indefinitely.
Well, Aviwe Mtila, thank you very much for giving us that first look inside Enyobeni Tavern, where 21 teenagers died this past weekend. Still many questions, still many concerns about exactly what happened, but it does seem that we are getting closer to some answers, and hopefully we'll see some arrests soon. Thank you very much, Aviwe Mtila.